Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. Today, we are thrilled to welcome a TV icon who starred in one of the most beloved sitcoms of all time, has worked regularly in show business for over 60 years, alongside some of the most legendary actors, author of the book, The Importance of Being Ernie, From My Three Sons to Mad Men, A Hollywood Survivor Tells All. Great title, by the way. Please help us welcome Barry Livingston. Barry, thanks so much for joining us.
Very good to be here.
Well, to start with, I read your book, The Importance of Being Ernie, and it was just fascinating. You're extremely open and forthright in it. It had so many great anecdotes, and I highly recommend that everyone buy it, by the way. What struck me right away is, like we said in the introduction, you really have worked alongside some of and had encounters with some of the most legendary performers who've ever lived. I mean, Fred McMurray, Paul Newman, Lucille Ball, Mickey Rooney, Clint Eastwood, Jerry Lewis, Dick Van Dyke. Has there ever been a time when you just looked around and say, whoa, these are some giants in the industry?
Sure, I mean, those are, I'm a fan of all those people and all their work too. So, and even at the time, working with Jerry Lewis or Jackie Gleason, I was a huge fan of the Honeymooners, and working with Lucy, I was a huge fan of I Love Lucy. So, back in the day, even I was really, aware when it was that kind of a project that I was working with somebody truly special. And so that was always great. And, happy to have been working with Robert Downey Jr. these days in a film a few years ago, or Brad Pitt. So, the march of big names goes on.
You come from a showbiz family. I was reading, this was fascinating, your book, and if you don't mind telling it, your grandfather was a bookie and was paid off in theaters for a debt. How big of a debt was that?
That's the story, again, stories get embellished over time, but it was during the Depression, and it was in Baltimore, and I mean, I don't think that was that uncommon. I don't think he was any big league gangster or anything, but I think to supplant the family income to survive, that was a little side business, a little side hustle that he had. And that was kind of the introduction to show business, although, in a very low level of show business. It was a combination of burlesque house. Back in the day, movie theaters were almost a 24/7 operation, and they would have comedians between the movies and jugglers and burlesque dancers, strippers, which my mother was. So that's where my dad met my mom. So yes, to answer your question, that's what I'd heard. I'm going to go with that.
That was fascinating to me. That was just an incredible thing.
And what an amazing, introduction into show business all the way around. I was actually fascinated to learn that you basically got started by just walking into Screen Actors Guild and signing up. I mean, that was not possible in my day. So how did that happen?
Well, I think my brother got his first job. We used to go to a swim school and Hollywood Boulevard, and it was in the 50s, and all during the baby boom, and producers and everybody, directors and casting people, all were taking their kids to teach them how to swim, and we just happened to be there as also learning how to swim. And anyway, my brother got a job as doing a stunt double thing. One of the casting people saw my brother, and he resembled the little boy in Lassie, and so he had to join SAG, to be able to do the job. He was hired to do a stunt double thing. Fall into a lake and almost drown because Stan could swim. This little kid at the time, Tommy Reddick, couldn't. So anyway, I kind of tagged along, going down to SAG to get the card and for my brother, and then the lady said, "Oh, what about him? Is he joining?" And my mom, kind of went, "Okay, yeah, why not?" So we both signed up, and lo and behold, we eventually started to work a lot after that.
Wow.
just that easy.
Yeah.
Your brother started acting first, like you said. Do you remember him doing it and just thinking, I want to do this too? Or is it just something that you were kind of like pushed into a foregone conclusion that he was doing it?
I think I liked the attention that I saw he was getting. I mean, he was a little kid, what, 4 5 years old, something like that. So that fact didn't escape me. That it was kind of all the aunts and uncles and cousins all thought he was thought it was amazing that he was a movie television actor. So I kind of probably went, that looks like a pretty good gig. I think I want to try that. Again, my mom went off, and I already had my SAG card, so it was like a no-brainer. And I'm trying to think, the very first job I ever got, we were playing brothers, and he went on a legitimate audition for a film called Rally Around the Flag Boys with Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. It was a big film, and he got the job. And again, my mother dragged me along because we weren't very affluent people by any means at that point, not that we are at now. But still, so I was in the waiting room. The producers come out with Stan after he just read, and they said, we're going to hire your son. We'd really love him. And they go, who's that? And they go, well, my mom said that's his brother. And he goes, oh, is he an actor? She goes, oh, yeah. I'm going there. I don't know anything about acting. But anyway, so they said, well, there's another role in it for the other son, and it'd be great. He's kind of a cute little kid. So I don't know. I guess I probably went in and said a few lines for them or something. And anyway, we both got jobs, and that was my very first gig. And then I got fired. I got fired from that gig, though, by the way, because I wasn't wearing glasses at the audition, and when I was hired, and when we started shooting, and then my eyes during the actual on a sound stage, my vision was deteriorating before everyone's eyes, and my eyes started crossing. And the director started losing his mind because he thought I was not paying attention, because I was supposed to be focused on the TV and in one of the scenes. And anyway, couldn't, I thought I was, but to the camera, it looked like I was looking across the room like this, and talking. So anyway, they determined I needed glasses. They took me right from the set to a hospital, and because they thought something more serious was happening. And as it turned out, I just, they said, no, he's got an astigmatism, he needs glasses. Came back to the set a day or two later, and the producers didn't like that idea. They went, what? We didn't hire him. That's not how he was when we hired him. Paul Newman's son with glasses. No. And so it was back in an era when all those kind of things meant a lot. You had to look perfect. And so I was let go. I was fired.
Wow. Oh my God. You book your first job and you lose your first job. Well, it didn't hurt you in the long run. That's a good thing.
It's a good lesson of welcome to Hollywood. You're
exactly.
Actually not.
Well, you and your brother, did you compete for a lot of the same parts, or your difference in age had you in different categories?
We were different in categories. He was the epitome of the cute little blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy. And I was kind of like yesterday's paper, I was like leftovers. It's just sort of, hair was like a Mo Howard bowl cut, and glasses, and I had a pretty good set of buck teeth by that time. And so I was more of the character actor kid, like the Froggy or the, from Little Rascals, or something like that. So yes, we never really had any kind of overlap of competing for the same roles.
Yeah, you started so young, like we mentioned. You had a small part in the Jerry Lewis film. I watched that this weekend as well. The Errand Boy, the Jelly Bean scene. Did you have trouble keeping it together with him?
Well, yeah, because Jerry was, as I recall, was quite animated on the set. He was directing as well, and he was quite hyper, and but he was a legend, to kids of our age at that point. It was like Jim Carrey at the height of The Mask, Ace Ventura. He was a god to all the kids because he was so funny. So I just recall him being very, very hyper, but very meticulous in setting up. Like you saw that scene. It goes on forever. That scene. It's very, very patient in the way it unfolds, which is great. It just doesn't it's not just a joke that they kind of set up. It's a gag that has a whole long setup, and then the punchline is I got the punchline. I almost got punched.
So you were aware of all these, actors and performers that you were with at the time. I mean, they weren't like, I'm just with another actor. You were aware of who these people were.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, sure. I mean, we had a TV and television and we were just where we lived was just south of Hollywood Boulevard on a street called Wilcox in Hollywood. So my brother and I, we were up on the boulevard a lot, and it was whatever, a quarter to go see a movie back in the day. And I mean, so we, in addition to all the $1 million movie on Channel 9 or whatever it was.
Yes. Oh my God. That's the $1 million movie. That's a big part of my childhood as well.
Yeah. All the war movies with John Wayne but we were particularly fans of all the horror films. My brother was, and dragged me to all the Roger Corman and all the the great Rank movies, The Raven, and Peter Lorre and Vincent Price were like gods too. So we used Pit and the Pendulum, scared me.
I was going to ask this later, but since you just brought it up now, can you still do the Peter Lorre impression that I read in the book?
I'm very sorry. My boss, I'm not too sure.
I don't know. That's a good. That's their work on it.
So you had a recurring role in Ozzie and Harriet, one of the pioneering sitcoms, actually. I mean, what are some of your memories of being on that show and of the Nelson family?
Well, again, Rick was an idol of everybody. Rick was huge as a rock star, and so that was cool. Suddenly, being in his orbit. And Ozzie was a great teacher. Ozzie was very patient with kids. He was a father, obviously, and liked kids, and really was a great mentor in a lot of ways of just being very patient, and reminding me as a little kid where my attention should be in the scene. Whoever's talking, make sure you're looking at them, and I've given you what you have to say, so you don't have to worry about that. Just whatever I tell you in the script, to say that after when it's your turn. It's kind of acting 101, just being aware and present and listening. So they were wonderful, and that's actually where I got my very, very first guest star billing on a television series, was with the Nelsons. So it's a big thing, for all actors to make that step up into that league.
Wow. Well, from like one iconic show to another, and you've got a nice list of them. The Lucy Show. I mean, you played Gail Gordon's son a couple times. What was that set like, and what was it like to be around her?
Well, I mean, everyone's probably seen the Ricardos, or a lot of people have seen the Ricardos. I saw it. I thought it was pretty close to, the movie that came out with Nicole Kidman and Javier Bardem.
Oh, that's interesting to know. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it was pretty true to what I recall them, and particularly William Frawley too, who was, part of the I Love Lucy orbit as the people next door. Anyway, I loved working with Lucy. She seemed to like me. She was, kind of harsh and direct with her crew and writers, particularly. She was not just there for a paycheck. She was really, really a craftsman in terms of, perfecting a bit or writing better jokes. And she could be pretty tough, but she was always sweet to me. She was really, really nice.
Well, I think part of it's probably just, at the time, like, a woman running a business, and just, a lot of pressure on her too, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think she pretty much lived at the studio. I think, but I was in the Lucy Show, right? There's Here's Lucy, there was I Love Lucy, the Lucy Show, and Here's Lucy. Maybe I was in Here's Lucy. I don't recall. It was in the early 60s, wherever she was at that point. But she and Desi had split. Right. And so she was running the studio too. Desi Lou Studios was producing Star Trek, the original Star Trek, Untouchables, My Favorite Martian, Hogan's Heroes. I don't know how much she oversaw those productions, but she was the head of the studio in addition to doing her own show. So she had a lot of pressure on her. And but again, she was quite formidable lady for sure.
Well, I just want to go on to My Three Sons now. I mean, that was always one of my favorites growing up. The funny thing is, like, I saw it in syndication. I came into it with you as the main person because they didn't show a lot of the earlier episodes in syndication. They did not show the black and white episodes. So I didn't even know for years that there was an earlier cast before.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I mean, those are honestly probably the best episodes in terms of writing and execution of the series, because it was closer to what the show, the crux of the show was a single family, a dad, an all male household, and Bub was the nanny, and so usually shows are fresher, the ideas are fresher, as it went on they evolved, and that's when we came in about the fourth year. And it was great, but those early black and white episodes I think are really, really special. And I probably am in about 13 or a few more than that, maybe. Some of it was when I was a friend next door, not a son yet.
Right. So you transitioned from being a friend next door. So how did that come about? They just, because you were there? I mean, because you just that.
Well, I was there, and sure, they didn't tell me when I was hired to just come on as Ernie Thompson, not Ernie Douglas, as the kid next door. They didn't make any mention that I was supposed to be a foster child. That was when it came time that they needed to replace Tim Considine, who played Mike on the show, and he was decided to leave. Producers probably kind of already had it in their head that Tim might not resign to come back, and so you got to have another son. So maybe they already had that, but they never revealed it to me until the stories started come about where, he's a foster child and his parents are leaving, and Mike is about to go off on some trip to Ecuador and never come back or whatever. And so it was nice, when it finally occurred, and they were actually some really nice episodes that transitioned me from being the kid next door to being adopted by the Nelsons.
So Considine left because he wanted to direct. Was that it?
Yeah, I think he wanted to do explore other opportunities behind. He did direct one episode of My Three Sons, which was unusual because normally, because of the way we shot maybe out of 8 or 9, 10 episodes a day sometimes to work around Fred McMurray's schedule and just do everything with Fred. They'd have to have one director because one director the whole season would just the continuity was important. So they shot, they allowed Tim to do one episode, and they started it on a Monday and finished it on a Friday, which was kind of the normal way that they would, a normal shoot on any other series would just, day one, that it would be starting a new episode, and that by the end of the week or 8 or 9 days, they'd have a whole episode filmed, and then a new director would come in and film the next episode. So anyway, so Tim did direct that, but he wanted to move on, and that's the way it worked.
Eventually, it just seemed like Chuck from Happy Days. He was never mentioned again.
Yeah, well, once it's gone, they don't want to muddy the waters because it's called My Three Sons, right. And suddenly, wait a minute, it's My Three Sons, My 3.5 sons. I don't know what would it be.
Well, I at one point in my career worked with my brother on one show, and it was very strange and awkward to have a family member that I was working with. How was it working for you, working with your brother?
It was great. I love my brother, and it was really, exciting to somehow be brought into his world. And, every little brother, not every, but in our case, we were very close. And so I, idolized him, and I knew all the other cast members. Don Grady, who played, Robbie, who was one of the cast members playing a brother, was sort of like another faux big brother for me. And so, yeah, it was great. And we spent an awful lot of time together because we would drive to the studio in the morning, and we would work all day, and we'd go to school in the same schoolroom on the studio, and then shared a dressing room because the production company was so friggin' cheap. They wouldn't give us our own dressing rooms. So, and then, then we'd drive home, and I think we shared a bedroom at home. So all of that was, was like, could be a tinderbox for a lot of issues, but we got along really well.
One of you just mentioned Fred McMurray's schedule. How tough on that was all on the rest of the cast and you guys, that, I have to do this scene now. I'm going to do it again, like in 3 months, pick up where I left off.
No, it wasn't tough. As kids, you just deal with whatever they throw at you. And you just, the night before, you knew what scenes you were going to do. And, the tone of the show, every episode was pretty much the same. It wasn't like a whole lot of work had to go into, thinking about it. But, you had to know what the storyline was. Probably for the older actors, William Frawley, William Demarest, even McMurray, you have to keep track of where you're at in the story, in an episode. And again, like I say, you could be working on 9 different stories in one day, as opposed to when you're doing a normal television series, you're just focusing on that one story of that episode. It wasn't that big a deal. We just got on with it, whatever the job was, and said our lines, and did our thing, and ate a few donuts while we were at work, and went home.
In your book, your book upset me with one part, I'll say, because in my mind as a kid, Fred McMurray was like, between your show and the Disney movies, he was like America's dad. And then I read he was like very business. That's it, just business as usual, like, there too. So some of your memories of him?
Well, Fred was a big star, and, and we all knew him from all the Disney movies, and even some of his earlier greater movies, The Double Indemnity and The Cane Mutiny. Those are classic films from the 30s and 40s, 50s. So, but, then he also got very popular doing the Shaggy Dog and The Absent-Minded Professor and Son of Flubber and all these other great movies. So, he was kind of a nice, a professional. He was one of the top stars of his era. And so, he was kind of like the senior partner in the firm that, you had to respect and you had to work for, but there was not a great off the set, warm vacation, come to the house for a barbecue vibe that we ever got from Fred. But we all kind of understood that and appreciated the job we had and appreciated him.
And how did it affect when William Frawley basically was pushed off the show? How did that affect the rest of the cast? When that happened?
Again, as a kid, you're kind of, you're seeing it happen, but you're not really aware why. Nobody was going, oh, he's got heart problems. And, they kind of went, oh, Bill is not coming back. And you go, why? He goes, well, he's going to do other things. And you go, oh, okay. But, the fact of it was he couldn't pass his insurance, physical that they give you before every season they start, and you got to go to a doctor, and it was a pretty limited physical you'd get. They'd pretty much put your, hand on your pulse and listen to your heart, and if it's there, if it's ticking at all, you'd be okay. Anyway, they couldn't with Bill. I think his pulse was so weak they couldn't even find it. So anyway, he was let go, and it was not a happy day, because we all love Bill, but and it was kind of a lot of uncertainty as to whether or not the show would go accept the new guy, which was William Demarest. And it was, a little, Fred McMurray and William Demarest were pals, so it was no big deal for them. The rest of us, we all had to adjust.
Did you notice a difference in tone in the show at all?
No, there was a difference in tone in the actors. Bill, but they were both pretty much tough, rough guys that, and Bill Frawley was a little more, he was a drinker, and he was a little more lubricated. At lunch, he'd have a few, and he'd be all happy and loose tongue, and say whatever, no filter. And Demarest was a little more of a straight arrow kind of, no BS kind of guy, and but nonetheless, they were both charming and kind of fun to be around.
And whatever happened to Wilson?
Good question. I don't know. Still trying to figure that out. It's one of the great mysteries of the 20th century. Wilson was my dog. Yes, when I boy next door. I think they had a couple episodes with Wilson, and Tramp and Wilson didn't get along. So
Oh, really?
Wilson got 86th.
Well, when I mean, the show ends. Was this a huge disappointment, or did you feel like it had kind of run its course? Was it time?
You don't know what the future holds. We were all kind of not necessarily fatigued, but we were all at a different. I was 18 years old by the time the show ended, so I was pretty much veering into adulthood. I know Don Grady had already left the show, who in the 12th season. Stan, I think, was in and out. He might have even. The only people left at home was me and Dodie and the dog. So, the whole concept of my three sons, dad having to figure out the problems of every kid, it was starting to fade. And so we were anxious. Personally, I was anxious to see what the future held. And I was certainly aware of the fact that there were pitfalls of being typecast. Sure. Luckily, I was got a job very quickly on, I did a Hallmark Hall of Fame episode of the Broadway musical, You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, which was a great departure for me. And, I started to go, I'm going to take this serious. And I went to New York and studied acting and worked on Broadway and off Broadway, and came back and got another series called Sons and Daughters, a CBS show, and did a lot of episodic shows back in the day and movies of the week, and it continues to roll. I'm going to give a plug before we end here to my movie now, because there's
I hope so.
I just did called Notorious Nick.
That's what I was going to ask you about that.
Okay. Well, we're getting near towards the end here. I thought we weren't going to get around to that.
No, of course we're going to ask you about that. What a movie! I mean, what an inspirational story, and you're like amazing in that.
I had a great role. It's, I've had some, I've worked in every decade since My Three Sons, whether it was doing, The Nanny or Streets of San Francisco or Will and Grace. I've got a recurring role on the series Bosch, and there'll be a new version of that called Bosch Legacy, which I'm in. But then Notorious Nick was a really major starring role in the film. And for those that don't know, it's the story of Nick Newell, Nick Newell was a mixed martial arts fighter who only had one arm. And, you can certainly appreciate the difficulties that he faced being taken seriously by other boxers. And this was something he wanted to do and was rejected at every turn. And I played his high school wrestling coach. And eventually he teams up with me to try to help him, get over the hump, get into the world of MMA, which is what his passion was. Long story short, after struggles and a lot of, disappointments, he finally got into the world a little bit, got his, started beating people, and eventually got a shot at the world title. And you have to see the movie to see how it ends.
It's on Amazon now, and I really recommend that everyone go see it. You're like intense, and it's like, and I don't know why, it's like a side of you that I hadn't seen before, and you were so
honestly
good.
Yeah, I was a little, when it was offered to me, I went, oh, this is I'm honestly, the last 30-40 years I've made a career out of playing doctors and lawyers and accountants and professionals. Occasionally there'd be a weirdo here or there, but for the most part it was, but yes, this was my my Burgess Meredith moment. I was Rocky. I was Mickey to Rocky. Not quite that gruff, but yes, it had a different turn and a different side that I had to find in myself.
Did you meet Nick Newell as well during the?
No, I did not. I think Cody Christian, who's the star of the movie, Cody's very popular, and who's on Teen Wolf and currently on All American. I think he decided he really didn't want to, he didn't really want to meet the real Nick Newell, and I don't know whether was happening or not. But to play somebody and have them on the set can be a little daunting. So, sure. I think no, I never heard from him. I know Nick has seen the movie. I've seen him on Facebook, and I know he's mentioned it, and I think he liked it. It was it's nice to hear that when you're trying to do somebody's life that they appreciate how it came out. So, and I'm playing a real guy too. I played, Jeremy Libazuski was the guy who was his mentor, his wrestling coach, and then finally his MMA coach.
Well, like I said, you were fantastic. I watched that this weekend as well. You were fantastic in it.
Thank you.
Great movie, very inspirational movie. And again, Barry, thank you so much for doing this today. We appreciate. I'm a huge fan. Like I said, I grew up watching you, and it was so much fun to get to speak to you as well.
Glad we got to do it. Glad we did. Thank you.
And this has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen, along with Ike Eisenmann. And again, we thank Barry Livingston. And please subscribe. Barry, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Yes. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank
It
you,
was a
guys.
blast. And keep it up, man. Your career has been awesome. It's just been awesome, and you roll right through it. Eat it up.
I'm rolling. Yeah, you know, thank God my wife puts up with me, because you know, long periods of moping around the house, and then finally a job comes around. So yeah, but I don't know intention of quitting. You know, again, you're either, you know, you either keep working or you don't, and you never know when they pull the plug on your career. But yeah,
well, you're welcome back anytime you'd like. We'd love to have you, and you're great. So like I said, and honestly, great movie. So
it really came together. You know,
Yeah.
it was shot, you know, on a relatively low budget, but they pulled it off, and particularly, you know, the one arm thing, because that was a real challenge to make that look real. A lot of CGI went into that, and I don't think they anticipated how much work that was going to require to make it look good. I think it looks pretty darn good,
Yeah.
but you know, they had to digitally remove Cody's arm, although you know he was playing it with a green
Sure.
sock on his arm, so they could do that. They knew they'd have to do a little, but it was a lot more labor intensive than they anticipated, which very expensive. So,
like
but
I said, it's a side of you that I'm just like, wow. That was
yeah, I
amazing.
think I'd like to get more of that, you know, but again, it's just a matter of getting eyeballs on the project, and people discovering it, and the people who are hiring to go, oh, you can do that. Let's give him a shot. You know, it's hard, you know, it's hard to break out. I'm trying to break out, you know, something new at my ripe old age. So, you know, who knows where that's going to go.
Well, like I said, anytime you'd like to come back, we'd love to have you. And thank you again for doing this.
All right. Thanks very much. Talk to you
Have an
later.
awesome day, man. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.